Okay, so we're going to start with the Eclipse Notes. Before we do that, I want to kind of give you an overview of what the next few weeks is going to look like. So today, the Eclipse Notes are actually the second part of your Moon Phases notes. So you'll see the document linked, it says Moon Notes. The top part is the same thing that you were given before to do the backs of your flashcards. You have to scroll down. So when you scroll past that picture, you should see Roman numeral 2 is eclipse. Okay, we're going to work with those notes today. All of this information came from the ck12.org site you worked with yesterday. So that's where I pulled all the information from, so you should be a little bit familiar with it. Then next week we have to do a project with phases of the moon and the eclipses. So I'm still kind of throwing around ideas. I think I'm going to try to do something a little bit non-digital, like you have to create something that goes through the phases of the moon and incorporates the types of eclipses. So that's coming up. That should take us through next week, and then next week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, you'll have some sort of assessment over all of the moon notes, both the phases of the moon and eclipses. And then we're to like really the last week of school. Yeah, there'll be 1 week where we're cleaning up stuff, but the very last topic we have to cover is seasons, why we have seasons. So we're almost finished. Tomorrow you have week 28 vocab due. Then week 29 will be assigned and due the next week, and then week 30 is your last week of vocab. I know that makes you sad. And then there'll be a vocab quiz over those 3 weeks, but there's really not a whole lot left. So probably your last big project is going to be whatever we do next week with the phases of the moon and eclipses. And I'll schedule some Google Meet time so we can talk about it. But let's get to taking these notes. So I don't know if you saw me earlier, but you have to scroll down. So the notes that you have say moon phases, and then the picture, and then Roman numeral 2, letter A, the definition of an eclipse. Okay? So an eclipse is when one object in the sky, and keep in mind the moon, the earth, the sun are a part of a galaxy, but that's just one part of what's happening in space. So an eclipse is any time an object in the sky moves into the shadow of another such object. So you'll see definitions that say like celestial bodies. Okay, anytime you have an object in the sky that moves into the shadow of another such object, that's what's known as an eclipse. So when one object in the sky moves into the shadow of another such object. That's what we call an eclipse. Hey, I'm recording something. An eclipse for us, for what we're talking about, is determined by the position of the sun, moon, and earth. Okay, so when we talk about eclipse here on earth, it all has to do with the position of the sun, the moon, and the earth. There are two types of eclipses, a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. A solar eclipse, that happens when the moon is in the new moon phase. So occurs when the moon passes directly between the earth and the sun. All right, so the only time that happens is when the moon is in the new moon phase. You have earth, moon, sun. Then the moon casts a shadow on the earth and blocks Earth's view of the sun. So you have to also keep in mind that the moon, in comparison to the earth and the sun, is much smaller. So when you have a solar eclipse, that's not going to happen over the entire earth because it's the moon's shadow getting in the way of the earth and the sun. And that's small. It's not going to cover the entire surface of the earth. So there'll only be certain places in the world on the earth where you can go and see a solar eclipse. But keep in mind, solar eclipse, new moon, because they only happen with the new moon phase. Total solar eclipse, having a hard time spelling, sorry, occurs when the moon's shadow completely blocks the sun. Okay, that doesn't mean that the moon's shadow completely blocks the sun on the entire earth. That just means that wherever you're viewing the eclipse, where that point on earth is, the shadow is completely blocking out the sun. A partial solar eclipse is when only a portion of the sun is out of view. Now, solar eclipses are rare and usually last only a few minutes because, like I said, the moon casts only a small shadow. All right, so solar eclipse, it's when you have the moon in the new moon phase. Only portions of the earth will see a total solar eclipse, and then again, only portions will see a partial solar eclipse because the shadow of the moon is so much smaller than the size of the earth. A lunar eclipse, that's the other side, occurs when the full moon moves through the Earth's shadow. So a solar eclipse, it's the moon's shadow on the Earth blocking the sun, so blocking the sunlight. And then a lunar eclipse is a full moon, and it's the shadow of the Earth that's blocking the moon. It only happens when Earth is between the moon and the sun. And all three are lined up on the same plane. You should have picked up from the ck12.org yesterday that the moon doesn't orbit the Earth right around like our equator. It's actually on a tilt, okay, a 5-degree tilt of an axis. So it's moving around the Earth, yes, but it's tilted a little, so it does have an up and a down, and it only happens when Sun, Earth, and Moon are lined up like in the same plane that you actually will get a lunar eclipse because the shadow of the Earth is falling on the Moon. A total lunar eclipse occurs when the Moon travels completely in Earth's umbra. You are going to have to know what the word umbra means. It was in the video yesterday, or it was in ck12.org, and it's going to be one of your vocab words for this next week, week 29. Partial lunar eclipse is when only a portion of the moon enters the Earth's umbra, or when it's in the penumbra. And finally, a lunar eclipse lasts for hours, can last for hours, and can be seen by any part of the Earth with a view of the moon at the time of the eclipse. Because the Earth's shadow is large. It's bigger on the moon. Yes? Thank you. Okay, so anyone that is able to see the moon at that time would be able to see the eclipse. Okay? So now you have all of your information for solar and lunar eclipse. You have the definition of an eclipse in general. We're going to work with this information next week. You do need to have these notes. You will have some sort of an assessment next week, asking questions. Certainly you could expect to see the question or have the question, which phase of the moon happens with the solar eclipse? Which phase of the moon happens with the lunar eclipse? But you are, of course, allowed to have these notes when you're doing it. All right? If you have any project suggestions, you are more than welcome to send them my way. I'm interested to see what you're interested in. All right, enjoy the rest of your day.